Good morning, everybody, and our distinguished guests. On behalf of Invest in Africa, my name is Wangeshi. I am the country manager or country director of Invest in Africa, and it is a great pleasure to have you all join us this morning to engage on this session on unlocking opportunities for the youth in agricultural value chain in Kenya. And we are anticipating to be addressed or to engage the Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture. And we do thank you very, very much for joining us. So I would like to start by introducing Invest in Africa for the sake of those who may not be familiar with our work, and just talk about our work and about today's masterclass. So we are a private sector, not-for-profit Pan-African initiative that works across different countries to drive job creation and sustainable economic development across different sectors of the economy, and particularly we are focused on developing the micro, small, and medium enterprises, or the smallholder, or the smallholder farmer. So we're working with a vision of prospering African economies, and with the sole mission of enhancing trade, supporting trade for the small and medium enterprises, or the micro entrepreneurs, and the large corporates or the larger organizations. So we partner with multinationals, we partner with large corporates, we partner with larger buyers, and we enable them to work with SMEs or MSMEs by focusing on three interventions. One is improving access to markets. So we help entrepreneurs and support entrepreneurs to work better with the large organizations, and we also intervene on the area of skills. So we support skills development for small and medium enterprises. And lastly, we support in access to finance. So we partner with the various organizations, and we have created this large ecosystem support of partners who make up or who form the initiative of Invest in Africa. And we are working with a target of creating 250,000 jobs. It's quite an ambitious target in the next 3 years, by 2025, where we are supporting, or we want to ensure that our SMEs win contracts, or we support market linkages for contracts worth $1 billion. So this is our big ambition in Art Invest in Africa. So back again to today's session. First of all, IIA focuses on three key sectors. We work across agribusiness. We are supporting food and agriculture, which is a key focus of the government of Kenya. We also work across infrastructure development, where we support entrepreneurs in the sectors of mining, extractives, oil and gas, and construction. And across our work, we focus on engendering the inclusion of youth and women across all our activities. So we are very big on promoting sustainability. We are very big on gender and youth inclusion, which is why we are having this session today that is focused on youth opportunities in agriculture. So I just want to talk about the Masterclass series that we are running during this time as we support entrepreneurs in a COVID world. So Invest in Africa is in partnership with the Mastercard Foundation on a program which we started as soon as COVID-19 set in, on SME recovery and resilience program. And this masterclass is running under this program, where we do have a virtual toolkit that we are delivering to SMEs and MSMEs across Kenya, across Senegal, and across Ghana, where Invest in Africa does operate. So we run on a week-by-week basis. We run a masterclass series like this one, where we invite key speakers, we invite informed people in the society, we bring in coaches, entrepreneurs, to provide knowledge and skills to SME groups that will enhance their recovery and support them in building resilience. Secondly, we also are running a coaching program under this series where we are partnering with various coaching organizations, and as an entrepreneur or a smallholder farmer or as an MSME, you can join in to get support through coaching to be able to implement personalized plans or practical skills. I know a lot of us are involved in repurposing our businesses. We are refocusing, we are trying out new things. So that is where you can come, you can join in and get this very personalized support. And then thirdly, we also run peer-to-peer sessions. Like I know next week we'll be running a session where we match circles of SME linkages with the larger businesses, where you can join in to learn, to get mentorship from a business which is much more experienced, and you can get hands-on support or even get to interact and engage to gain business. And then the fourth component of this program is that we do have a knowledge academy, and this is a resource center where you can access best practice guides, toolkits and resources, like how-to guides. Maybe you want to know how to write a business plan, you're trying to venture into a new business, you want to maybe undertake your risk profile for your business. So we do have a knowledge academy where you can access these resources, and everything is entirely free. And finally, we are running an investor readiness program to enable you as an entrepreneur or a smallholder farmers. And I do recognize that we also have some members participating today who are intermediaries. Maybe you support groups of entrepreneurs. So would like you to know that you can direct your members here, because we have an investor readiness program where we are training SMEs, we are identifying their needs and matching them to available finance through our financing partners. So to participate in this, you're very welcome. It's free, and you can express your interest by writing to felistas.sang@investinafrica.com, who is coordinating this program at this particular time. So you're very, very welcome. And we keep saying that we are really your partner in your journey of growth as an entrepreneur. And during these times, we are running this program, and we are really proud to be in partnership with Masterclass. So I would like us to talk about today's session before I introduce the speaker. And as outlined in the topic, this is a masterclass designed to engage the youth in a conversation around unlocking opportunities for youth in agricultural value chains. And we are glad that we are joined by the Principal Secretary under the Ministry of Agriculture, who is here to talk to us about the various initiatives within the ministry. But for purposes of this masterclass, we first of all want to discuss opportunities in agribusiness for the youth, because I know that there are opportunities, and we keep seeing advertisements, we see notices, we see government initiatives, but we are here today to understand what opportunities do exist, particularly for agribusiness, and secondly, how as youth we can be able to tap onto the existing and any new opportunities that are coming up at this time. And thirdly, would like to understand, are there incentives within the government that or within the Ministry of Agriculture that do exist to support the youth in agribusiness, whether this is in financing or it's in support programs or in skills development. This is why we put this up together, because as I had mentioned, is that Invest in Africa is also focused on engendering inclusion of youth in economic development activities, and particularly in the value chains. So that's why we are here today to engage. We are here today to ask questions and to understand how as youth or as young people, can we take advantage of what does exist? And more importantly, is to be able to understand the commitment that the government of Kenya through the Ministry of Agriculture has made or is making to the youth today as a promise. We know that, but for instance, in East Africa, youth employment stands at an average of almost 50%. I think it's about 48.2%, and this does pose a major challenge to economies. Despite the growth or the strong economic growth within the region, if we don't include the youth in these activities, then we can comfortably say that we don't really have a future. So this does pose a major challenge to the economies of Africa, and particularly within East Africa. And as we have seen, is that there has been such a slow progress in reducing unemployment within this region. This definitely will have for poverty and also on equality. So, and we find unemployment among the youth across the regions very, very, very high. That is a real challenge. We are constantly talking about unemployment and underemployment within Africa and within Kenya, and this does affect both the male youth and the female youth. So, which is why we decided to engage the ministry on this very hot topic, and we'll be requesting you to ask as many questions as possible to engage the PS as much as possible. So now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished participants, I would like now to go ahead and introduce our guest for today, and I would like to read out his profile. I think for Invest in Africa, this is a great opportunity for us to be holding or to be hosting a speaker like the one we have today. So we are privileged to be joined by Professor Hamadi Bonga, who is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Agriculture and for Agricultural Research in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Irrigation in the government of Kenya. And most of you might be familiar with Professor. So Professor Hamadi, before joining the ministry, he is the former founding principal of Taita University, and he was the Vice Chancellor between 2007 and 2017. So that is for 10 years. And prior to that, he was also the professor in the Department of Botany at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. He is well skilled in biology, agricultural science, sequencing, microbiology, molecular biological techniques, and RNA genes. So he's a real scientist who has worked with termites, the soda lakes of Kenya, mangrove swamps, agricultural and forest soils, and also on Mount Kenya glacier. He has a PhD in biology from Germany. So we are very, very privileged to have you, Professor. We've been waiting for you. And with us this morning, we have entrepreneurs, we have smallholder farmers, we have intermediaries, we have organizations that are supporting SMEs and intermediaries who are very, very keen to engage us on this masterclass on understanding the opportunities for youth within agricultural value chains. And because our time is gone, I will want us to straight away move to the session. And first of all, I'll allow Professor to introduce himself very, very briefly and talk to us. And then we'll be starting off with a set of questions to Professor to engage him on this very, very hot topic. And distinguished participants, as we said, feel free to type your question on the chat box. We will be reading out those questions to the professor. But just before we get onto that, because we know that this is a very topical issue, as we know, And as we lay the context, I think we'll first of all want Professor to introduce himself, and then we'll go straight into the questions. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to hand this over to Professor for a very brief introduction, and then we'll progress.
Thank you very much. You have done most of the introduction. I think you did your homework very well. This is me, Professor Amadi Boga, currently the Principal Secretary in charge of crops and agricultural research in the ministry. And in the ministry, we are dealing with over 100 value chains, and the crop value chains are the most dominant, of course. Anything from tea to macadamia to avocados to other crops that might not even be familiar. And our main mandate is to make sure that we have the policy environment right and the regulatory environment right, so that we can create an enabling environment for businesses and for farmers and for other actors in the crop value chains to thrive, including input suppliers, as well as processors, as well as off-takers, as well as those who are providing other services like agrovets, as well as post-harvest and storage handling. All of those are players in the agricultural value chain, and the role of the ministry is to make sure that our policy is right and the working environment is right for all these people and all these actors to thrive in a good working environment, so that the sector can grow. And as we know, 34% of the GDP is directly linked to agriculture, and up to 57% indirectly. And so when we get it right at the policy and regulatory level, it will stimulate the economy even further. Over to you.
All right. So not a problem, Professor. So I think you've given us some context in terms of your office. And while we start, Professor, we know that this is a very important topic in Kenya because 1 million young people enter the labor market annually. That is according to the current statistics. And as you have rightly put it, this sector contributes to 34% of GDP. But I think we are all aware that the potential of the sector in contributing to the creation of decent jobs for youth has not fully been exploited. Perhaps it hasn't even been fully explored, given that you're working with over 100 or about 100 value chain. And today, what we are seeing is very low numbers of youth who are participating in the production activities along any of the agricultural value chains. So maybe as a first question, Professor, is to find out from you, or to just hear your thoughts and insights. Why are youth not actively engaged in these agricultural value chains? Because as you rightly put it, there are many crops and some we may not even be able to grow. So what, in your view, are the challenges, or why are the youth not actively engaged?
Yeah, I think just to agree with you that most youth view the agriculture sector as farming only. They don't see the whole value chain. Agriculture is bigger than farming. And agriculture is modern as modern can be. And probably through this intro, I'll be able to highlight some of those areas. So the average age of our farmer is 60 years old. And the average age of our consumer is 17 years old. And yet, our demographics shows that we are younger than has ever been, but the young people are not participating in production. But what I would like to highlight to the youth is that in the agriculture value chain, there is opportunities on the input side. So provision of inputs like agrovets, fertilizer, seeds, all that space is still very vital for the agriculture sector. So there are employment opportunity and business opportunities there. There is also opportunities on the provision of equipment and equipment services, so tractors and all the other services that are needed that go into production. There is also opportunities on the off-tech side. And I know most of off-tech side means off-tech to markets, as well as on the storage and post-harvest handling side, as well as on the processing side. So you can stretch the opportunities in the agricultural value chains. I don't think there's anything as big as agriculture. The reason why the youth are not in it is, number one, of the attitude. They come to it with an attitude, and yet globally, agriculture is the most vibrant sector, still employing more people than even the ICT sector. So the opportunities are bigger in agriculture even here. So the attitude, we have to work on the attitude. And then the fact that they don't own land, that is a factor that sort of stops them from going into agriculture. The issue of capital to start businesses is also a factor that is hampering from going into agriculture. The issue of knowledge, that means to know not just the production, but what happens at every stage of the agricultural value chain and how you can take advantage of that. I think that is also a major hindrance for people who want to go into the agriculture sector, especially for youth. We have developed the Youth in Agribusiness strategy, and I encourage the youth to go onto our website to look at it and interact with it and see how they can overcome some of these challenges. We have clearly stated there how that can happen.
Okay. So thank you very much, Professor. And I think you have clearly outlined why the youth, and you've talked about, the issue of the attitude that the youth do come or do view this particular sector with. So perhaps in your view, what do you think are the most critical changes that can be made? I know that you have developed the youth in the strategy document, but in your view, in looking at solutions, what are like the top 3 critical changes that can be made in order to increase the number of youth involvement? You did talk about attitude and a couple of others, but which are the top 3 which perhaps if the youth focused on, we would see a big change in terms of participation?
I think only 2 things. If we focused on them, we will have a chance. Number one, the youth have to see money at the end of their activity. They have to see that there is money in agriculture, because people go to work to look for, not to entertain themselves. So I think if we can show them that there's big money in agriculture, they will go for it. The other critical thing is knowledge, because if you go into agriculture without knowledge, you will be frustrated. So if we can show them that there is money and that we give them the right knowledge to enable them to access that money, I think we have done the job. Because they go into border because they speak money, although it's not much of it, and it's really just a small part of the value chain, carrying things from here to there, while they could control the entire value chain. I'll give an example of a young man, not Kenyan, but I'm sure there are other Kenyan young men who are doing similar things, called Grant Brooks. Grant Brooks came here in Kenya as a postgraduate student to study informal markets. And he looked at Kawangware market and what goes on there, and how a banana gets from Kisii to Kawangware to a table in Runda. And he saw a business opportunity and created an agri-tech company called Trigger Foods. Now, Trigger Foods links farmers to vendors. Right. Just through ICT and leveraging M-Pesa and facilitating logistics, he has created a $1 billion empire now. Almost every banana you eat in Nairobi is from Trigger Foods. And they're even distributing to households now before they used to distribute to vendors. And for them to be able to control, for example, the banana value chain, they had to understand production dynamics as well as market dynamics. So our youth must understand the complexity of the agriculture sector. They should approach it with the complexity it has. And for that, I think they need to learn. In the ministry, we have a new program called the Enable Youth Program, which is mainly geared towards incubating some of the youths who are interested to be agripreneurs. It's supported by the African Development Bank, and it will be administered together with the AFC. And there is a $3 billion facility there to get youth into some of the activities in the agricultural value chain. But also other organizations like Mastercard Foundation and Mercy Corps, Agra, all of them have funds to enable youth to go into agriculture, because financing is the other bit. But I think the first thing is for the youth to realize that there's money in agriculture and to equip themselves with the right knowledge. We have a lot of knowledge institutions. We have created almost 60 incubation centers for incubating youth, supported by African Development Bank, and they are scattered across the country. But there are other areas where you can acquire knowledge also within the university, so that as you go into the sector, you are fully equipped and you take advantage of all these funding opportunities. Land you can always lease if you want to go into production, but you don't have to go into production. You can even go into other parts of the value chain and still thrive.
Wow, thank you very much, Professor. That's quite insightful, and it's encouraging for the youth today to know that there's actually money in agriculture, and we have to see this money at the end of it. Thanks. And you've also talked about knowledge and how we can go about getting this. And I believe that speaks to the opportunities that most of the people who are here are really would like to hear. Now, I think just to go back to the main issues that you have talked to on why the youth are not really there and talking about solutions, I can see that a couple of people are already talking about this issue on land access for the youth. Now, in your view, Professor, how can we simplify and strengthen these land lease agreements? Because we know, like Invest in Africa at the moment, on our ecosystem, we have about over 1,000, close to 2,000 farmers who are working under various farmer groups. And when you look at the youth component, the youth component of the youth participation is quite low. And the issue of land keeps coming up. So how do you think we can simplify or strengthen these land lease agreements in Kenya? Because you said, yes, you can lease land, but how easy is it and how can we simplify it?
It's easy. We don't have to make it complex. We don't even have to make it a legal issue. You can even lease from your parents, for example, so that you know you're in serious business. Because sometimes, even at the household level, the land belongs to the father. And so if you want to go into agribusiness, you can get a lease from your parent, especially if you want to use it as an instrument to look for resources. So you can get a written lease from your parent. Alternatively, you can get lease from neighbors. I know many farmers who are producing a lot of maize in the Rift Valley, and they have just leased land. I think maybe the challenge would be the cost of lease. Recently, I talked to a young man who has a farming enterprise called the Onion Empire. He was farming in Voi, and then he decided to move to Kwale, but he didn't own land in Kwale, but he leased 3 acres for 10,000 per month, and he's growing onions, he's growing watermelons, he's growing tomatoes, he's growing pili hoho, and all manner of things continuously, because there is a river and the water is nearby. So he can produce throughout the year. So he can pay 320,000 land lease per year because he's producing throughout the year. And he said it's relatively cheap. And I'm sure in other places it's even cheaper. So this means going into arrangements with the landlords who are not using their land so that you can use it for production. They'll get an income, you'll get your income also. And I know an acre of onions can produce more than what you'll be paying on a monthly basis. It's a question of having the right business plan. Alternatively, of course, people can buy land if they have the resources, or they can get it allocated by government, but that is a long political process that we don't even want to get into. It usually gets very complicated because of community issues and because of political issues. But I know many people who are in Kitengela have leased land, they're producing. I know colleagues of mine who have gone to Mwea area, they have leased land for 10 years and they're producing. I know a big farmer in Machakos who has leased 2,000 acres from Hopcraft Ranch on the right as you go to Mombasa. And he's producing, and he has leased it for 10 years. So I think people just have to be bold and take some risks and some chances. And if they have the right knowledge and they have planned their business plan well, it should be fulfilling. I know even at the family level, people can still access land. And I think what we don't have shortage of in Kenya is land. Kenya has a lot of land. I think what we are struggling with is land use, how to use that land for productive purposes and how to access it. And there are various models that youth can employ to access if they want to go into the production part. Otherwise, they are not limited from going to other parts of the agricultural value chain. Even providing extension or other services to farmer is still lucrative, and it still makes you a player in the value chain.
Okay, thank you very much. Really, you've talked well about the issue of land and answered some of the questions that I also had. So I know that most of the participants really want to hear about opportunities, but there are also a couple of questions around financing, which we know that it still remains a very, very big issue for agricultural enterprises. And as I had mentioned, at Invest in Africa, we do partner with organizations on supporting agri-entrepreneurs, smallholder farmers with access to finance and other entrepreneurs. And we have experienced this in reality, how difficult it is to just get an opportunity financed by a commercial bank. Now, on the issue of financing, I know you talked about the Enable Youth and a fund of almost $30 million that is available. But are there catalytic models that can be put in place to be able to unlock these opportunities, particularly at scale? Because we have tried it at Invest in Africa. We have been engaging funders to provide like guarantee schemes or any other solutions that could make this work really possible. So maybe you can just talk to us about any of your insights around financing and how this can be made easier, particularly for entrepreneurs or agripreneurs.
I think financing still remains a challenge because the model that is there is not very well suited for agriculture. So we are still in discussions about how to improve that. Most of the commercial banks, including our own AFC, insist on a title deed, but a title deed does not do business. I think it's the person who does business and who can show a balance sheet and show that if they are able to show a healthy balance sheet, it should be possible to finance on the basis of that. And of course, for those who are starting, we have various startup models that can be exploited depending on the level of the startup. But I think there are a lot of instruments. What we probably intend to do is summarize all the opportunities that are there in the financing of agriculture and make them available. From those ones which are being done by organizations like One Acre Fund who are funding farmers 1 acre to do 1 acre of maize, and they're able to repay. And it's quite a simple and successful model targeted at increasing productivity, to more complex ones like the Enable Youth, which is targeting youth specifically, which will be administered by the Ministry, African Development Bank, and the AFC. So I think as far as I'm concerned, the opportunities are there. The youth need to, this is part of the knowledge they need to have so that they can see how to navigate the financing opportunities that are there. And I think as part of their learning curve, even as they learn agronomy, they learn the market, they should learn the tools that are available. But I know quite a number of players that are out there that have money, and they don't have people to fund, just because the business plans that come are not up to date. They of course have to assess you, because they don't want just to give you money for the sake of it. Most of the money that is given that way, like from Ways of Fund or Youth Fund, is never repaid. So that is also a waste. And if people are serious about investment, then they need to plan themselves so that as they approach the financial institution, they see seriousness. And I think some of the political funds sometimes designed more like handouts, so people don't take them seriously. It's never repaid, it never evolves. But I think there are a lot of people who are ready to finance. Of course, the commercial banks are more expensive, but I think there are other instruments which have come through other development partners and philanthropic organizations to facilitate this. Sometimes even off-takers can finance contract farming if they see that people are serious. The challenge is that every time people finance through contract farming, sometimes people are deceptive. They sell the produce to somebody else because they don't want to repay their debts. So I think there's a bit of knowledge, learning, behavioral changes, and a bit of seriousness that is required for those people who want to go into the agriculture value chain sector. I think those who have tried and have been serious, they have found the resources.
Okay, that's really great.
But we are working to improve the system so that it's not title deed based. AFC has tons of title deeds. They finance the title deed. They didn't finance the farming. Most of those who got the money never even farmed. They just used this for something else.
Okay. So thank you. And I do agree that there's a very big need to see how we can improve the financing ecosystem to make agriculture or agripreneurship work, with models of financing that can really support that and outside the normal collateral. So now let's talk about opportunities, Professor. You have already talked about a couple of value chains right there, about 100, and we would really like to know what existing and maybe new opportunities within agricultural value chains are there that the youth can engage in. We know that agriculture has massive potential. And really, how can we be able to maximize these opportunities? I'm glad that you talked about the Enable Youth program and that there are opportunities for incubation, but within the agricultural value chains, from where you sit, well, are there any new opportunities or existing which you think would be good for the youth to engage in?
Yeah, I think, like I said, there are a lot of opportunities in the agricultural value chain. From the input side, there are opportunities. In the production side, there are opportunities. And in the off-take processing, post-harvest side, there are opportunities. These will always be there, regardless of the value chain. So I think the youth, based on their circumstance, should be able to look and see which of these opportunities do I leverage for my own growth and for my own input into the ecosystem. Number two, the growing cities. There are a lot of urban centers which are emerging. These are growth areas. Nairobi itself, with a population of 5 million, is a big market. It needs to be fed with all manner of that Sumu, Nyeri, all which do not have their own rural areas for agricultural produce supply. There are also opportunities in the ICT, leveraging ICT, creating agri-tech companies to enable people structure the market in a more modern way, so that people do not have to go to Korogosho or Kawangware and the hustle and bustle there, which makes agriculture and agricultural produce marketing look negative. So even in creating agri-tech companies, there are opportunities there. There are also markets in Europe and in the USA for some of our products. If we understand the needs of the consumers in Europe and we are able to keep to their standards, it's a big market, a rich market. There are opportunities in China for some of our produce. And so the youth can leverage some of these. We live in the information era. We have all this information at the click of your phone like this. You don't even need a computer anymore. You can still do it on the phone. So I see a lot of opportunities out there and inside here and in the region in East Africa. All we need to do is to understand what does the market need, in which quantities, in which qualities, who will we get it from? Are the producers trained enough in good agricultural practices so that they are able to meet these market needs? And I think in there we will find our space and they will prosper.
Okay, so thank you. We see there are quite a number of opportunities regardless of the value chain. I like that. The growing cities, agri-tech, export markets in Europe and all that. But out of this, Professor, maybe there could be very specific value chains where you think that maybe they are more friendly to the youth, or they exist, but a lot of people are not venturing into. Are there any specific ones that you would like us to start studying or thinking about?
That is a hard one.
It's a hard one.
Because I value all value chains. Would you be surprised that the second largest traded commodity in the world is coffee after petroleum? It's coffee after petroleum. And yet our coffee is going down, and yet the demand globally is going up. So this is still a big opportunity for Kenyan coffee because of its brand. Would you be surprised that there is opportunity in spices? Rosemary, dhania, and other spices which are required in Europe. Opportunities even in flowers. Flowers is a big business. Most of our exports now, earnings, the largest is horticulture. Most of it driven by not only vegetables, but also flowers. And in the flower industry, we are not just talking about roses. There's a whole range of diversity there, all the way from cactus to the roses. Big opportunities. But I think the most important thing is for the youth to know what does the market need. Okay. And I haven't done that study because I promote all value chains. But I think it's a good time to start interacting also with other information sources to see what does the world need from Kenya, and which areas are we more competitive, and we take advantage of that.
Now, there is a particular question I would like to focus on here before we go to the other main questions, in being short here on what is the government doing to deal with unscrupulous business people, that is hotels and supermarkets that do not pay the youth after supplying. And I'm assuming that perhaps these are supplying vegetables and other agricultural produce, and perhaps if there is any government plan to deal with cartels and brokers that are thriving within the agricultural sector.
Now, I think the biggest, of course, people can go into the business individually and thrive if they understand the dynamics of whatever they are doing. Of course, as a government, we are really pushing everybody, including ourselves, to pay suppliers on time, within a given time. I know there are various legislation in the pipeworks to tighten this so that those who supply are supported and those who are given services pay for those services. I don't think it's for lack of laws or enforcement that people sometimes move out, refuse to meet their obligation or delay, causing pain to the farmers and those who have supplied. But there are various pieces of legislation, including new ones, including in the BBI proposals, which is trying to exactly address this very thorny area where people supply and wait for years to be paid. But we know, of course, because of COVID and other circumstances, especially in the tourism sector, where business has not been good, some institutions may be struggling to meet their obligations. So for us from the ministry, we don't have a real role in that because ours is to promote production and to help farmers look for markets. Of course, the best way to look for markets is through formation of cooperatives, which themselves sometimes have governance problems and they are not able to manage themselves. But the smallholder farmer who has a small produce needs to aggregate their produce to access the market together with the other members of the cooperative. That way they are shielded. If the cooperative is strong enough, it's able to pay off its farmers early as it waits for the proceeds from the sales. And they're able to negotiate at a better price. Most of the time, brokers are trying to exploit. And what you have called cartels also are trying to exploit. The best antidote to brokers and the cartels is a strong producer organization. In other words, a strong cooperative for a particular value chain. An organization like Kenya Tea Development Agency is able to link its farmers to the market, and it's able to support its farmers with inputs. It's not perfect, but I think that is the best model that works, that will shield the farmers from the vagaries of the marketplace.
Thank you very much on that point on aggregating produce and forming strong farmer or producer organizations and cooperatives. I do also personally believe that that is the way to go. And now, Professor, what about the question of the influx of imported goods? Like we do have products like eggs from Uganda and fish from China, which is killing agripreneurship in Kenya, because we do understand that those are some of the low-lying opportunities. How is the government planning to deal with this? Because we see this as an influx within the market, and it's a situation that looks like it could get out of control.
Yeah. I think it's all a question of market dynamics. If a fish can get from China to Kenya and still be cheaper than a fish bred in Kenya, it means there is a problem with our production system. So we must make our food more affordable. So we need to work on what is making our production system more expensive. And I think from where I stand, the problem is the yield gap. We have a yield gap. That means per unit cost, we are producing at a higher per unit cost for most of the produce competition. Now, we have organizations like WTO, COMESA, East African Community. All these are trading blocks where we have gone in voluntarily and signed on to these agreements, committing to be part of the free market. So to be part of this free market, we have to be competitive in our production systems. Otherwise, we'll continue complaining because, for example, East African Community, Uganda, Tanzania, and ourselves, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan, it's a free trade area. We have a common customs union. So we have common tariffs. So goods are supposed to move around without anything, without any check, without any control. So because if we stop them, they will stop us. And our biggest importer is Tanzania, maybe Uganda, for some of our manufactured goods. So it's a give and take, and I think we need to help our farmers to produce more efficiently. For example, the cost for production of a bag of maize in Kenya might be anywhere between 2,500 to 2,600, while in Tanzania it could be 1,500. So that the bag of maize from Tanzania reaches here still much cheaper than the Kenyan bag of maize. Those are the challenges. And the solutions are means in investing in improved production system and not engaging in protectionism. Because if we engage in protectionism, that means the Kenyan consumer will buy the produce at a much higher cost. For example, compared to all the other countries, we are second only to Nigeria in terms of household budget used for food. So 52% for Nigeria, 45% for us, and we are headed in the wrong direction. So it's a big debate than just protecting and throwing barriers, whether tariff or non-tariff barriers. The idea is to make our production cheap. That means thinking about our production system for every value chain to make them competitive.
Okay, and I hear you on that. We really need to make our production systems more efficient by increased investments. Now, talking about that, how is this government, for instance, supporting farmers through subsidies? For instance, there's a comment here that Tanzania is giving subsidy to farmers. What is happening in Kenya? Are there any subsidies to the real farmers? And this is particularly also to support the point that you just made on investing in order to make production systems more efficient, because that point on productivity and improvement of yield is really spot on. But when there are inefficiencies within the market system, we know that this can still be a tall order. So from a ministry perspective or government perspective, are there any subsidies available, or are there plans to roll out such subsidies towards that?
There have always been subsidies, including the fertilizer subsidy, and also farmers being given seeds or seedlings for free. So these have always been there, but that is not the solution to this problem. In fact, sometimes the subsidies themselves become part of the problem. For example, the fertilizer program was a lot of money going into purchase of fertilizer, which was not the right fertilizer because there was no soil testing. And so in the end, it created soil acidity and aggravated the problem of low productivity. So the subsidies have to be smart subsidies that are targeting the right kind of farmer, that are not lifelong subsidies, but short-term incentives to drive change in the farmer behavior, and then largely focus on making sure that the private sector is able to bring the commodities here that are required by farmers at a lower cost. Because if we pile up taxes on one end, all those taxes are transferred to farmers, even if in the end we give subsidy in terms of fertilizer, but already you find the private sector is struggling. So in our case, we have now tried to work towards making the provision of farm inputs a private sector-led enterprise, not government-led enterprise, so that we don't have two prices in the market. We have also made it where we want to support the farmer, we support them using an e-voucher, and the e-voucher enables the farmer to do soil testing, to buy seeds, to buy fertilizer themselves from the private sector, and not the government buying bulky fertilizer and then coming to distribute to friends and relatives and civil servants. And then in the end, the farmer who is targeted is really not benefiting. Productivity is not realized. In case the smart approach is to register the farmer, you geotag the farm, you know the enterprise you are supporting, you provide an e-voucher, and then you monitor also using various tools whether production is happening and whether there's any change. After 3 years, you win off that group and bring in a new group so that we don't have this perpetual dependency on subsidy.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And that's a very, very strong point, because again, subsidies, if they're not smart, then they're not sustainable. And we are still trying to get ourselves sustainable as a country and as a sector. And I do support that point. And I've taken note of the point on the participation of private sector and driving collaboration with private sector as a way and an approach that can really build into sustainable practice. As I mentioned, that is what we do at Invest in Africa. We engage private sector to support youth, to support women, to support smallholder farmers and SMEs, and we do believe that private sector has got the role to play, and it's really our responsibility as private sector to make this work by forming or creating these very viable partnerships and viable models. And I see that a lot of people are very keen to understand the opportunities that do exist, and perhaps also from your personal insights, PS, on really what you think, where you think the youth can really be focusing on. I think you have really talked about that. There is somebody who is talking about a mention you made on opportunities in offtake, and who are the offtakers. I know you did talk about how you work or you direct the farmers to strong cooperatives, but there's a question here on who are the off-takers. Could there be off-takers that maybe the ministry is working with, who are not necessarily the cooperatives? Are there like private sector off-takers or large organizations that that could be of benefit for us to be aware of?
Yeah, I think one of the off-takers I talked about was Trigger Foods. I think Trigger Foods is the biggest, and I encourage everybody to go to the website of trigger.co.ke and see the kind of agri-tech companies that we should be proud of. There are others like Veg Pro. They work with smallholder farmer and take their produce to Europe. There are quite a number of off-takers in this space for the different producers. But of course, some of the young people themselves could be off-takers once they have figured out the market side of things.
Exactly, and that's a very good point. You've pointed us to the opportunities, including offtake, right from the downstream to the upstream. So there is a comment here for someone who's calling for financial support. I think it is Mwangi. You'd like to know how a youth can create synergies and benefit financially. So we'll just request you to talk to us at Invest in Africa. We may be having actors within the ecosystem that we can direct you to, as you are talking about financial institutions not being very enthusiastic to invest in startups. So Mwangi, kindly just you can talk to us. And then there's a comment from Miriam, who is stating that the key challenges is that we cannot run away. We cannot run away from and need a new strategy to bypass them is funding, brokers, and in the farm after production. So it's time to collaborate from the funding institution to the farmer to the market person to make sure it's a smooth chain. Yes, thank you, Miriam. I think the PS also alluded to that and gave us the model for KTDA and others. When we are aggregated, I believe that we can be able to make progress. And then Stanley Dono is also stating that he met with a convoy of lorries carrying onions, melon, tomatoes from Tanzania, and this has hiked the prices of onion. which are being sold at 20 bob, yet the cost of production is 25 bob. And this is because the Tanzania government is giving subsidy to farmers when we are controlling our market and subsidies to the real farmers, or maybe where are we? So I guess, yes, Stanley, we did talk about that, and Professor was quite elaborate about that. Stanley is also saying that Rwanda gives even 50% on all irrigation equipment and other inputs, but they target the real farmers and cartels. So that's a good point for us, a good point for us to note. And then there's somebody also talking about imported produce has no traceability, and that we can't use that to restrict the free trade movement of agriculture produce. And you can assure us that this can work to ease this poor market stuff. That is correct. Then there's also another comment on Lato milk that is produced in Uganda at a cost of 2 shillings less than a supermarket in Murang'a, compared to a packet of milk produced in Kangema, or even a pack of milk in Ruiru compared to Brookside. That's that is the reality. And I think nailed it and said we need to focus on improving productivity. I believe that when we work on productivity, traceability, and quality, we can lower, we can lower the price. But also there's a point on increasing the tax on imported products so that landing price can be expensive. Those are very, very good comments. So I would like us to just give this opportunity to our peers to advise us with a parting shot on the final words or the final advice to the youth today who are venturing or who are considering to venture in agribusiness, or who are already in agribusiness. So Professor, we have really enjoyed your insights and your knowledge, but would like you to just give us some closing remarks or your parting shot as we come to the end of this masterclass. So what advice do you have for the youth today?
I think youth need to realize that agriculture is big business. Food is big business. Every 2-3 hours we have to eat something. And that something has to be grown, transported, sold, prepared, served. And so you can see along the whole value chain, you are creating livelihood, you are creating wealth, and you're making people happy. So at any point in the value chain, there is an opportunity for you. At any point in the value chain, there is an opportunity for employment and for wealth creation. And I think those who want to venture into this space, I encourage them to do so. And it's not just a local thing in your village, it's a national thing. We have a growing population which has to be fed, and it's an international thing. We have a global population in the world which is growing, which needs to be fed. And for most of these value chains, the reason why you see us importing, we have a shortage internally, but also globally there is a shortage internationally. The most important thing is to pick your niche, understand it very well, understand the dynamics of production, understand the dynamics of the market, and specialize so that you are not all over the place. And then I think you'll see the prosperity coming from this. Will there be some setbacks? Of course, there is a setback for everything that we ever do. I think even the planes, before they started flying the way they do, there were a lot of accidents along the way. Even now, they still do happen. But the business of aviation has never stopped. So I think probably those who have tried and have not succeeded might feel disadvantaged. But I think look strategy on the website, the agribusiness strategy for youth and women, and you will see some of the areas where you could be having pitfalls and some of the suggestions of how you can improve. Look at the website of Calro, which has all manner of information for the different value chain that will enable you to understand the value chain you want to participate in and the role you want to play. And I think you will be able to thrive. And think small, start small, but think big, because the demand for food will never stop, and the people, the amount of money that goes into food will continue growing. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Professor. You have shared knowledge. I think we are wealthier now than we were from the vast knowledge and information on opportunities that we have gained today. And I really love your parting shot that we can start small and think big, and that there's money. Agriculture is actually big business. So for us, I think joining us today, this has been really fantastic. We now know that there's a strategy that we can look at. We can visit Kalo. I think Dennis has posted the link to Kalo, which has information on the value chain opportunities. There is the strategy document that outlines the youth focus, and there is also Trigger Foods. So we have quite a number of links that we have posted right here, and we'll be sharing with the participants after this, because we need to go and pass on this information to our members and to the ecosystem. So once again, thank you very much, Professor. And I know that we would like to connect with Professor, so we'll be sharing his details here. And for those of us joining, again, would like to encourage you to please subscribe to the Invest in Africa YouTube channel. It is www.youtube.com as usual. The link is right there. Just go to Invest in Africa and enjoy our videos, because we post content on our masterclasses and on all the happenings that Invest in Africa is engaging in. So would like to really connect with you. So as mentioned earlier, as we were starting, please follow us on Twitter. Join us and become our follower on YouTube as well. Let's engage. Join our Facebook page. We are building a community. Remember, we are prospering African economies, and we are here to work with you as an entrepreneur. And for us today, we really want to extend our appreciation to all that joined us today, and to Professor Hamadi Boga. I'm sure would love to host him again. This has been incredible, Professor, and it's a great learning opportunities for us. And as I mentioned, we are supporting close to 2,000 smallholder farmers, and there are other entrepreneurs and support organizations represented here. So we will be sharing this information on unlocking opportunities for the youth. We thank you all for your participating, and we look forward to connecting with you again. Please follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. We are waiting for your feedback, and thank you very much.